This sounds like it's going to be very loud. Is that okay? Right. Don't worry, I promised to, I promised to finish spot on 20 past, so we have enough time to talk about these things. I'm going to concentrate on geographical issues of education. Education is far too wide in 40 minutes to cover what all of you would like me to cover. Also, I should apologise for this particular slide. This is a picture I like by Joseph Kelly. But Alistair asked us to be upbeat about 2027. And this isn't a particularly upbeat picture. The country isn't doing very well at the moment. But if you step back, we've never had so many teachers and teaching assistants. We've never had so many nice teachers and teaching assistants. They're better than the ones that I had at school. We've never had as many university places. We've never had as many jobs. Now that isn't necessarily as good, because we haven't actually got a country full of good jobs that people want to do, or that their education actually fits into. But it's not all bleak. However, there is an enormous amount which is very, very wrong with education in Britain at the moment. The kind of things that are obviously wrong are having schools privatised, being run by little barons of trustees who decided amongst themselves that they're the ones who should be running these schools. Often running them as a kind of charitable thing that they do while their own children go off to some other school. I mean, that's just revolting. And I can go on and on about this kind of thing. But what I want you to think is about how much is going to change in 10 years. I'm almost going to get it certainly wrong about what will happen. I'm going to tell you what I think should happen. But where I think I'm going to be right is that an enormous amount is going to happen. And the reason why I'm confident about that is because so much has happened in the last 10 years. Going back to 2007, when we had university fees of £3,000 per student, when academy schools were just for the poorest school in your area, just to get it a new building. Think about how much has changed in just 10 years, and you should get an idea of the pace of change. One mistake that people often make is they think that things don't change that fast, and hence they can't change that fast. They do change that quickly. We're also a country running out of money. Empire 2.0 is not going to work. So whatever we do, we're going to have to do it with a bit less. But that doesn't mean it has to be worse. We're not going to get these. I was in the signatories of this letter to the Guardian about grammar schools in 2016. Fairly pointless exercise writing letters to the Guardian. It wasn't writing letters like this to the Guardian that helped. It was the most amazing general election result in June of this year that has just stopped the eugenicists from coming back. The argument for grammar schools was an argument from people who believe in eugenics, who believe that some people are far more able than others, and you've just got to identify who it is and educate them separately. I think in the next 10 years we will overcome the eugenicists. The reason I think that is because it's the eugenicists who are currently in charge of our political destiny. It's the eugenicists who are getting us Brexit. It's the eugenicists who are doing the negotiations. They are about to muck up in a way that the British elite has not mucked up since Suez. And so the argument that some people have got special genes and are especially clever, and you need to spend more on their education, is going to be blown out of the water by what's about to happen politically in the next couple of years. There isn't many upsides to Brexit. It's going to be painful. But the idea that Boris is superior is a top cornflake. Yeah? Almost worth it. My practical experience of education, apart from teaching universities for about 30 years, is my first job was in a playgroup, and then as a play worker. We used to have play workers before the cuts. Play workers were good. You looked after a recreation ground. You could get hundreds of kids coming to the recreation ground. Why is it good? Apart from other things, we are the most obese children in Europe. It really was worth our while having play workers, but we don't anymore. This is the playgroup, one of the playgroups where I first worked, still around in Dorling. if you're talking about education, you have to go all the way through. We now have a privatised preschool system. When my children were preschool age, I lived in a house in Sheffield. And as each of my children went to the preschool nursery, I watched the owner of the nursery, who had a big house on the hill above our house, and we could see it. I watched her add another wing onto her property as my children went to the nursery and were semi-warehoused in what private nurseries now are. I think in 10 years' time we will have better control of that. Education goes horribly wrong when you have a profit motive in it. This is why private schools are charitable, because even the rich know that education goes wrong when there's a profit motive. You get Trump universities. There are universities in the States which spend more on marketing than on teaching. That kind of thing you want to avoid. Practical ideas. I'm a geographer, so I'm going to give you them from around the world. There are lots of debates about when children should start school. In much of Europe they start at 6. They do better, by the way, when they start at 6. But my favourite time to start school is the New Zealand model. Anybody here from New Zealand? Great. One of may have happened when you were that age. You go on your 5th birthday. That's when you go to school. So every new person at school is their birthday. And you phase them in during the year. That's one idea for you. More seriously, we have a huge problem with our schools. Unlike schools anywhere else in Europe, our schools are exam factories. And this is producing stupid children. And more of us are beginning to realise this. There are still a sizable number of people in the country who think that if you've got lots of A stars, it means you're clever. But again, Brexit should help solve that. Because it's the people with the A stars, partly, who got us there. We still have children being tested as they enter school about whether they can recognise the McDonald's arches as part of their baseline test before the Fisher Family Trust get hold of them completely. You know, every child gets a number and then that number has to be improved as they go through. It's gravely wild in primary schools. Tony Blair's education is partly a good thing. It was great to get more money, it was great to get teaching assistants. All that actually happened in the end of the day was that one extra child in 30 from schools in the poorest fifth of areas got to university. Now that was a major achievement, but it wasn't huge. And the bad thing that happened at the same time was an obsession with GCSE results. Without realising that just getting A's and B's and C's doesn't mean that you are clever or able. And I'm going to keep repeating this until I die. Because I teach more children now with more A stars than A's than I ever have in my life before. And they do not turn up as budding little geniuses. They turn up as budding little controlled hamster wheels, kind of energised identikit kids who've been made to memorise syllabuses and get A stars. And the worst thing you can say to them is, not quite sure what's going to be in the exam this year. They're always different, every university sets their own. Yeah? We have a system in Britain that puts to the top people who are good at question spotting. We have many other problems. We almost certainly, it's hard to prove this because other European countries don't count it, because they don't do it. We almost certainly exclude more children from our schools, suspend and exclude them than anywhere else in Europe. My daughter had a friend at school at age 7. He was excluded for threatening a teacher with a pencil. Okay, he was in a bad mood. He was excluded permanently from school at the age of 7. Lost all his friends. We do it more than anywhere else in Europe. Hundreds of thousands of children being excluded. All that's got to change. And a lot of that can change in 10 years. If you want another example about thinking about change, 100 years is great. You know, just think back 100 years to what we had then, and you can see that you get enormous change in 100 years. Imagine we were talking 100 years ago, and I told you the most common job for women won't be working in service. 100 years ago you thought, oh no, it has to be. How else are we going to clean out the chimney or whatever, you know? But obviously, all that goes. In 100 years' time, our education will be utterly, utterly different to what it is now. But to get there, 10 years' time has to be quite a lot different. And again, and again, and again. The differences appear natural as soon as they occur. When I was at school, we were still caned. Right? That went shortly after I left school, unless you went to a private school, where you paid for the privilege to carry on having corporal punishment a little bit longer. But we really did that. There'll be things going on today, like tests in school, where somebody in 20 years' time will say, do you know they really did that? They really made them read Lord of the Flies and memorise poems and come out with some absolute dross and then to grade 8, which is an A at GCSE. I've watched it this year. For time I'll go through these quickly, but because I'm in Cambridge I thought I'd reuse the next 3 slides, which are a lovely story about the gifted children, in case the gifted children don't come up. It's just a story from Cambridge, so I'll let you look at it. Most of our children are very similar to each other. A tiny few, maybe 2% of our children may be unusually slow in some ways, small. And a very small proportion, again maybe 2%, may be unusually geeky. That's the best way to put it, unusually geeky. But the great news is that geekiness is not inherited. Normal people can produce geeks, and thankfully geeks don't tend to produce geeks, they tend to produce normal children. Now we have an education system that is currently designed around the idea of kind of funneling ducks down a duck trap, if you've ever seen one, to get the super geeky to the very top so that we can put them all into a couple of universities and train them up. Spend a lot more on their education before, say, 7 times more on average in the private sector because they've got special genes. Give them a tutor, put them into pairs of 2, teach them PPE, set them up to become Prime Minister, so that they decide we can have a referendum. Or that we will call an election because you can't possibly lose it. Or we'll do a speech in Florence and watch the credit rating of the country dive 2 hours later. I'm quite enjoying this because the alternative would be scary. The alternative would be a brave new world in which just a few people were super clever and we should just elect them to office and scrape and bow and watch with wonder at their ability. That isn't how human beings come. And currently the Conservative Party is doing a wonderful job of teaching us about how equal we are. This is a sad comment. It was done at 1:46 in the morning by a parent. This is the problem with the British education system. It means you've got parents who wake up 1:46 in the morning sending emails to newspapers in Cambridge worrying about their child. And I've got children. I know about this. I know about the agony about which primary school were they going to get English. Things like agony until they're in tomorrow. But then there isn't that difference. And then the fear about the secondary school, and can you afford the house price? Maybe you should go outside the state sector. Are you sacrificing your children's future for your own political identity or whatever? All that kind of guff. If there are any eugenics in the audience, 1927 was when Raymond Pearl explained it was wrong. Okay, there's the quote. And it's because there isn't a single IQ gene. We do, since 2010, have genome-wide analysis. Genome-wide analysis has shown that there is some genetic predisposition to geekiness. It is spread over many, many hundreds of genes. The good news about that is the random combination of him and her produces geekiness or not, but it is not particularly related to him and her's geekiness originally. That's my summary of the geographer's ability to understand genetics. Or the thing that most convinced me, my favourite paper on this, showed that the standard deviation for the supposedly higher IQ of people with the right genome was 1/10 of the difference between boys and girls at 15, with girls being much cleverer than boys at 15. It's a 10th. You know, if you want to get into the golden children with special ability, they're not that special. They're unusually good at maths, they're not very good at holding eyesight, he says, trying to hold your eyesight. But we have lots of problems, so here's my next practical suggestion. At the moment, of course, we do have selection. It's selection by house price. So how do you end selection by house price by 2027? I'm going to use Oxford. I'm going to use Oxford because I work in Oxford and I live in Oxford. My children go to school in Oxford, I went to school in Oxford. The solutions have to be different in different places. In most of the countryside, this is remarkably easy. There is just one big secondary school. You have to go there. Not going there is a lot of effort. Schools in the countryside tend to do okay. They can still make a mess of it. My favourite school in the rural area is Thomas Hardy School in Dorchester. It was originally a girls' grammar, a boys' grammar, and a couple of secondary moderns with some walls in between. They took the walls out. It's now one of the best comprehensives in the country. But it works because it's in Dorchester, and Dorchester is miles away from anywhere. Where schools go really badly wrong is on the East Coast, not far from here, where you have towns with 3. Absolutely fatal having 3. One becomes a sing school, and the problem is that's quite a big sing school because it's a third of your children. Okay? I'm not going to delve into Cambridge, other than when I meet children from Cambridge, they all come from one school. Yeah? I'm sure there are other children in Cambridge who would be interesting to teach in Oxford, who don't come from that particular school. Anyway, let's not try and get into more trouble than that. Oxford has about 5 or 6 secondaries. It has, at the bottom of the pile, the Oxford Academy, what was called Peer School. All the bottom schools have had their names changed since I was a child. It's like what's it called? Winston Summerfield? Yeah, Liverpool Topstep and Liverpool Riverside. Yeah, whenever you change the name of an area, it means something matters. This was Peer School. It's now called the Academy. It was one of those original Academy schools. It's got the most beautiful building of any school in Oxford. It's got the Minstrels Gallery. It's lovely. Only a quarter of children get their 5 GCSEs. Everybody tries to avoid it. It's in the bottom 20 state schools in the entire country. And the other 19 are in pit villages. This is Oxford. Right? That is very bad news. It's on the site of what used to be the county grammar school, the top state school in the city. Not much further than before I was going to school. The Catholic school has also changed its name to Gregory the Great. Just under 50% get their 5 GCSEs. It's largely avoided, except by the parents trying to get out of the academy, who get their children into the Catholic school. Oxford Boys, the old city grammar, not the county grammar, does a little bit better, but it's a bit Asian. Otherwise, it would do a lot better. It was prejudice. Cheney, my old school, finally, no name change. Right? Actually got the same name as it did in the 80s. 59%. Lecturers now send their children there. It's kind of okay, but seen as a bit daring. When I was introduced to the staff at the University of Oxford by the Vice-Chancellor, he talked a little bit about my books and my ridiculous CV, which shows I've got problems. But then he said, geeky, just geeky. Then he said to the audience, but what you really need to know about Danny is that he went to Cheney School. And for the first time in my life, I got a slight feeling about what it might be like to be female or not white, and to be patronised in that particular way. Because it wasn't that bad. But people will still pay an extra £100,000 to get their children into this school, where 72% get their GCSEs. That's actually changed its name. It's now the Charwell. When I was at school in Oxford, it was called Charwell, but it's become a bit posher. It's the Tatler Recommended Comprehensive of Oxford in the magazine. Oh, we're getting a new secretary. All new secretaries have to be free schools now, a new kind of madness, which means you do no planning. The only planning we've done in the whole of Oxfordshire is that Toby Young, he threatened to come And that's amazing. And the Conservative County Council got together with Labour City Council, together with everybody else, and found the site and found somebody other than Toby Young to set the school. Such was the fear. There's 2 miles distance, and here's the final school, just outside the city, Matthew Island. Actually does better than the Tatler recommended school at the north. House price differences of 100,000. Parents not sleeping, people renting homes to try to defend the living catchment areas. All this before you forget about the third of 15 or so going private in the city. It's a mess. How do you solve it? That clock is moving. You solve it by making it one school. It's really easy. Wouldn't work everywhere. A bit bigger than this would be harder. It's the kind of thing that can work for London Borough. You make it one school. You still have the sites. Remember, we're not going to have any money. We're going to be poorer. The food prices are going up. The Indians do not want to trade with us. We're about to get old people coming back from Spain. We're about to export young, fit people who we haven't paid for education back to Europe. We're being nasty and racist and making people not feel very welcome here. Things are going to be bad. It's our own fault that we voted for it. And we've still got to run Oxford schools. So you make them one school. You can save some money. When I was a child, each of these schools just had one head. They didn't even have a deputy head. Now they've each got a senior management team. Well, you only need one senior management team for the whole of Oxford, don't you? I know it's a bit mean, I wouldn't sack them, but I just wouldn't replace all the senior managers when they retire. One senior management team, one set of sites. You can call it the Oxford University Super Academy Wonder School. I don't care what ridiculous name you come up with. And then you can begin to move teachers between the sites. Because there's only one school there where the teachers on average are over age 30. And that's the Tatler recommended Chartwell School in the north. And as you head down, the further south you go, the younger they get. You're looking at early 20s down the bottom. They're turning over every 1 or 2 years. Make it one school, you can move the teachers around the sites where you need to move them. And a bit later, you can begin to move the pupils. If you want to teach Russian A-level, you teach Russian A-level. You teach it on one of the sites. A couple of years later, you might decide that you want all the science labs to be together when you refurbish them, because it makes more sense. So you pick which site is going to be the science site. There's a lot more you have to do. I don't think you can do all this by 2027. You have to make Oxford safe for children to cycle. It's not rocket science, I'm sure you've thought about it in Cambridge. It just involves controlling your cars a little bit. Just that car drivers tend to be particularly ferocious politically. But once you've got your children moving around the town, you'd be amazed how quickly parents decide that actually we're not going to let people drive that dangerously through your city anymore. That's how I begin to change the problems of a place like Oxford, which are bad, embarrassingly bad. Oxford's twinned with about 3 or 4 cities in Europe. My favourite twinning is with Bonn. I've asked school teachers in Bonn to rank their schools, and they can't, because they're all good. This is normal on the continent. The Beethoven Academy is slightly better-ish, but that's about it. Oh, and there is a private school in Bonn for boys who are very slow, of which the most famous pupil is called Prince Philip. That's what the Germans think about private schools. That's what they're for. You get your schooling system right, and your inequality down in the country, and your private schools will die out, apart from people like Prince Philip. Because they're not good. This is one other thing people in Britain don't understand. They don't understand that private schools are not good schools. The common thing you hear is, oh, I wish all schools could be as good as those private schools and have their resources. What do private schools do? First of all, they make children feel like failures because they have to take exams, and most of them fail those exams and don't get in. for the top selected private schools in my city. They go to the schools for the slightly slower children, and they know it's the schools for the slower children. And then they try as hard as they can to get them the highest possible grades they can, which turn those children into little exam factories of their own. And they take the children away from the normal society, from mixing with other people, and put them into a selected part of that society. And then you come to university and you want to study social science and you want to study society. You're at a massive disadvantage if you haven't been part of society, because you are taken out of it. But we have this terrible thing of saying, oh, private schools are good, maybe they could help other schools be good. They're not. But they do potentially have a future. If you are trying to move all these children around Oxford, there's one little school in the middle of the roundabout which is quite key, which is Magdalen School. Oxford University, I think Cambridge as well, are being asked to sponsor a school. Could we sponsor a school and help it become better using our brilliant knowledge that help create these prime ministers who've done such a good job? What the government don't realise is that we have sponsored schools. We have New College School, now an elite private school. Magdalen College School, now an elite private school. All the schools we sponsor end up becoming separated from their society. But Magdalen's in the right place to be the hub, to actually join in. So it's cooperation. You stop this stupid competition between schools. The competition between schools ends up with senior teachers spreading rumours about drug taking in other schools because they're so desperate to get their reputation of their schools up. That kind of thing goes on. We already have cooperative schools in this country. We have hundreds of schools and academies which are part of the cooperative movement. They're not run by trustees like other academies. I have a real dislike of what's going on with trustees. You can type the names of the trustees into Google and type Companies House to see who your trustees are of academy schools. And then you can look up the companies they own. And if the companies have no employees, you know that what your trustees are probably doing is avoiding tax. Right? The kind of, I won't get myself into any more danger about it, but it's just a bad, bad model. How do we get into this kind of mess? This country has been becoming more unequal every year since the late 1970s in a way that nowhere else in Europe has done. I was telling David earlier, we just managed to beat Estonia again. Estonia plays a game with the UK of occasionally being more unequal than us, but we just beat Estonia again, so we are again economically the most unequal country in Europe. Estonia was unequal for a different reason. It's unequal because people really didn't like being occupied by the Russians and communism. They kind of celebrated for a bit of inequality. We're unequal because people with money won at the end of the 70s and they won even more in the 80s, and then they managed to move all our political parties to the right by making donations to them and taking over the Labour Party, and they changed their thinking. And this has had an effect on some people in the country to make them believe in this kind of competition and superiority makes sense. And they become these superheads and run these supposed super schools. And they're part of the problem. The reason I put up is a little like Hull in the 1960s is that my grandfather was a headmaster in Scunthorpe. And he was put on a commission, I think by Wilson, in the 60s to try to work out why Hull schools were doing so badly. They went to Hull and discovered that what Hull was doing was taking their own pupils and making them into teachers. So they weren't bringing people in from outside, and Hull was spiralling down in terms of quality because of that. And in a way, we've done the same kind of thing with Thatcherite and then Blairite and then Cameron thinking. It's been the same kind of, if you just run harder, try harder, make sure exams are just it, it'll all get better. And people who don't believe that don't try to become heads and superheads, and they get kicked out of the system. There's a great danger with education of thinking, because we've all been through it, and then if you've got children, you go and see it again, and grandchildren again, there's a temptation to think that, oh, it's easy, you can just do it. It's obvious. This is one of why ministers get so involved and even write curriculums. You know, taking out climate change from geography. That's what Michael Gove did. Which is great, because it's really focused attention on climate change in geography. It's the same kind of silliness you get with housing, where people think they can be a housing expert. So they become a landlord, and then they find it's really hard to be a landlord and get tenants. And then they blame the tenants. And all these people setting up free schools, lots of them go wrong. Thankfully, we don't yet get much of this in health. People setting up their own hospital, thinking that they can just do it. Dominic Cummings was key to this. He was a Spad advisor to Gove. Gove had his own kind of revolutionary thoughts. It's that which has to be unraveled. That's where we are. It's not that impressive. Cummings has just come out saying he thinks that the EU break-off is a terrible, terrible mistake. He feels a bit guilty, as he was one of the two people at the heart of the Leave campaign. And of course, Gove stabbed Boris in the back. And so on. Where's the money going to come from? We'll have less, but that isn't as big as a problem as you might think. This is IMF data. This shows the proportion of GDP we spend on public services. The big spike is when we had to buy the banks, and Ireland from the down price, and bailed out every single bank. It was a bit of a mistake. Osborne gave them some money. The country which does best in the world on the international comparisons is Finland. Can you spot Finland? Yeah. What does Finland do when there's an almighty crash in the world economy? It increases taxes so the state spending doesn't have to fall. Amazing. They're geniuses in Finland. You know, but you can go now. Finland, France, Germany, even Greece is doing better than us. Right? We're down there at 36. Corbyn's manifesto, that gets us to 37%. Ooh, it's very radical. Can't possibly do that. Imagine that little line going up to 37%. Yeah? The world would end. All the innovators would leave the country. Turn off the lights, and that's all you to go. Amazing. And what's this amazing? This just isn't well known. These are IMF figures. This isn't the International World Socialist Organisation. It's the IMF. The OECD told us, was it yesterday, to stop being so unequal because it's bad for us? The OECD are a group of fairly right-wing economists. But even they can see we've got a problem. I kind of bore myself about inequality now because it just affects so many different things. Not just things like obesity, but it now appears to affect how much meat people eat and all kinds of things. And essentially, inequality is a measure of how badly you're running a country. If you let a country become very unequal, it means it's being run badly and many other things go badly. I'm just going to show you about mathematics. But we get the same for problem solving and the same for literacy. These are some PISA comparisons of a simple maths test done to 15-year-olds. Each of those circles is a country. Along the bottom is how unequal the country is by income. The United States is the most unequal of those large countries. Singapore, Rhodes teaches their children towards that particular test as well. The more equal countries, the children do better at maths at age 50. But it's not this graph I really want you to look at. I just want you to remember that graph. And say, okay, he's got a point, they do better at maths a bit in the more equal countries, we're not doing that bad in maths. Okay, now look at this next graph. Almost exactly the same test. But now applying to people up to the age of 24 rather than 15. That is a lot of you. So we lied. We're not going to stop this talk in about 3 minutes. We're actually going to give you a GCSE maths test next. Yeah? Particularly if you've come to one of these two universities in this city. Actually, if you're under 30, if you've got your hand up if you've got an A star, they actually loads you. And if you've got an A, if you've got a B, go on. Well done, good man. I won't go any lower. Now, the good news for you is you're not much different from the rest of them. Right? Because what we do in this country is we teach children how to get to the age 15, 16, an A star or an A on the day of the maths test. We don't teach them maths. We don't teach them to enjoy maths. We don't teach the idea that you solve problems abstractly and come against things you haven't seen before and think obliquely, how can you deal with that? Because if a teacher did that in school, any school, Eton down to the Oxford Academy, they'd be sacked. If a single child gets a B, I suspect actually they get an A in Eton. Nobody gets a B in geography. There's a board outside the geography house which says how many got A stars and how many got A's, and the ones who got A's feel bad. Teachers who don't try to maximise the score in the academy is trying to get a C or a D, and chucked out. So if you wanted to teach maths in the way they do in Japan or France or Germany, which means that a few years after you've taken the exam, you might be able to do maths. You can't do that. This is why we will change our education system in the next 10 years, because this kind of thing is only just becoming obvious. And it's even worse in the United States. And you know you don't know maths as well, most of you. Okay, some of you carried on, you did A-level, you might be strange. But you know you don't really know maths. What you don't know is that in normal affluent countries, people do know maths. That's why almost all my research assistants have been from outside the UK. Because I need people who can actually program a computer. Not, we call it coding as if it's a magical thing, right, that only wizards can do. Because we teach maths so badly that the idea of moving things around in a computer program was just too much for most of us. Very briefly on private schools. We get a bit too obsessed by private schools. We are weird. Only Chile spends more on private schools than we do. Most OECD countries spend more on children who are slightly behind the school in their state school systems, and they don't have private schools. We spend about a third of our entire secondary spending on just 7% of children. It's, if you're trying to waste money, it's the way to do it. But it will only go by improving the state system, really improving it, not aping private schools, creating something better. Creating in Oxford the best set of science blocks ever. Why would you send your child to a private school in Oxford if they could do Russian A-level or any language A-level, because they're all being taught around the city? If you had better science equipment in that school that concentrated the science than any of the private schools have, why would you do it? That's what you need to head to with private schools. And just to wind you up as we're getting towards the end, I'm completely in favour of private schools having their charitable status, because the alternative is dangerous. The minute you take it away and they become profit-making, then they get marketeers, then they start to really tell you lies about how wonderful they are. Then you may never get out of it. Once you get the profit motive into education, it's highly, highly dangerous. Universities. Most of education is not about universities, but we do have to say something about universities. No government is going to support £9,000 fees for everybody in the future. 10,000 is gone. It's amazing how fast things can change. One person, Andrew Fisher, stuck it in a Labour manifesto, and suddenly we're questioning fees and loans in a way we never have done before. If you doubt that things can change that fast, that's how fast they can then happen. We're going to have universities, we already have universities that are in a very bad way financially. We just hide it. That's the British way. Don't mention it. The Russell Group, year after year, have been taking 7% more children a year into the Russell Group. University of Reading, which is not in the Russell Group, routinely every year fills every single hotel room in Reading for 2 months until enough students give up and go home. Yeah. Down at Exeter, Bristol, the same kind of things going on. Taking more and more. We didn't have more babies 18 years ago. It's a big sum game. FE colleges are in trouble as well. Now, you're not going to let the buildings go derelict. It's not all going to work by merging. There is going to have to be some emergency nationalisation or local nationalisation of some of these sites within the next 10 years. Universities will also have to begin to become part of the city that they're in properly. Not in the kind of fake way they pretend to at the moment. Right? Occasionally doing something nice. When I was at Sheffield, we did one thing nice. There was a flood. Luckily the flood was out of term time. And so we housed some local people who were flooded out. But the University of Sheffield, like many universities, was set up by donations from the local public, paying subscriptions, so that your children and grandchildren can go to university. That's the university I used to work at before I came to Oxford, which is hardly a shining model of widening participation. How many children from South Yorkshire go to the University of Sheffield? It's in its original charter. In Scotland, in almost all of Europe, even in much of the United States, you go locally, your university is part of your city, you're teaching your friends' children. If you want anything to increase standards in teaching, actually teaching your friends' children is what drags up your standards as a lecturer. And we'll get a bit of that. Here's a map of the current hierarchy of universities. This is, each university is a circle. The circle's by the number of students. You're looking up at Cambridge, red dot there, next to the light blue dot, where we're in. We go down to, I think, Imperial and LSE. That's Oxford, the purple's Bristol, Queen Mary's there. They're the kind of top ranking universities, all in the south. Very, very hierarchical system. This is ranked by research income divided by students, which is a strange metric, but it actually shows where life is cosiest, if you like. There are none in the north. This is really unfair. In the same way that the north-south divide is widened with housing, it's widened with jobs, it's widened with pay, it's widened with wealth. It's also widened with our university system. And that's not sustainable. How can you begin to crack this? Well, if you look at every region of Europe, of all NUTS 2 regions, the region that was getting the highest funding from the European Union for research was the region called Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire and Berkshire. Partly because of the nuclear facilities, but mainly because of my university. Leaving Europe, which I was against, is one of the best ways to begin to crack the hierarchy of British universities, because you most damage the universities at the top of that hierarchy, who are getting in most of the European funding. I'm not trying to be depressing, this is my last slide. I am trying to give you ideas that things are going to change radically. If you want one last idea, we should devalue GCSEs. Why we take them as being so important at 16 still? They're the equivalent of the old school leaving exam in the past. And the worst thing we do with GCSEs is that we allow schools, academy schools, to evict all their children at 15, 16, and then readmit them. Academies choose their own admissions. Every state secondary in Oxford chose an academy. They're all in effect grammar schools and secondary models at age 16. And they readmit depending on the GCSEs. Head teacher was suspended today from the grammar school that tried to chuck some of its students out partway through their sixth form. Things are changing. But we need to extend that to all those academies that are playing this game of chucking them out at 16. We need to downgrade the GCSE. It's not that important. We need to stop sorting our children at 16 and sending the less academic ones, which essentially means working class, to do the engineering age 16 apprenticeship and pushing all the sons and daughters of university lecturers into the academic stream, because that's what we do at the moment here. We need to keep them together in the future, because it's a country that's going to have to work together with all of them. And lastly, that's the student loan bubble in the United States. If you want to see where we're heading, that's where you're going. Student loans have to go. Only a really stupid country would do them. That's why the United States did it, that's why Chile has them, that's why most of Europe doesn't. Student loans are based on the premise that you should take out a loan where you may have to pay 30, 50 or even £100,000 back, because your future salary is going to be so much higher than others. So student loans are based on the premise that we want the future to be unequal. In a more clever country where people did better at maths at age 24, you could never get away with it. And the worst thing, the most unfair thing about student loans is that 8% of students nationally don't take them, because their mum or dad pay their fees. So the idea that student loans somehow benefit the poor requires you not to realise that 8% of pupils who worked really hard to make their parents rich aren't paying them. And that dirty little secret is in my university, where it's not 8%, of course, it's 30%. So when I lecture, I'm lecturing 30% who aren't paying a penny, and 70% who will be paying probably 50, maybe £100,000. But this group over here aren't paying a penny. The group who aren't paying a penny are the children of the richest parents, and the ones who are paying £100,000 are the children of the poorest parents. And we're supposed to think this is fair. How did David Willis and Peter Mandelson and all the donors come to think this is fair? I sadly think it's not because they're devious. They didn't actually work this out themselves. I'm not a genius, but I'm not as silly as they are. I think if Willis and Adonis and Mandelson, who are involved in this, actually could work it through, they would realise themselves that what they had set up was deeply, deeply wrong. And that's why this is one of the things that's going to change in the next 10 years. The reason why you can say no fees, but you can't say we'll write off the loans that have already been given, is this problem. They're already too big. The loans you've already made are already too big to repay to the government. You can start off without them for these students, but solving the existing debt is going to be much harder because it's already so large. That is not a reason for making the problem even bigger. There's a lot to be done. A lot is wrong because this country became so incredibly unequal. The good news is that we can easily make so much of it so much better relatively quickly. Imagine the alternative, that you're sitting in a lecture theatre in Finland and somebody's trying to tell you what you could do to make the world a better place in Finland in 10 years' time. All they can say is, well, we're already taxed and spared the most. We're already at the top of the league table. I don't know what you do in Finland, but I do know what you do in this country, because we do so many things so badly. Thank you very much.